It's that time again. The annual conference of the American Society of Ag Consultants, otherwise known as ASAC, is going to be held in Fort Myers, Florida, this November 4th and 5th. Kurt Covington is one of 9 professionals who will address the conference. The other speakers who will cover a wide range of topics represent Florida Farm Bureau, Florida Citrus Commission, University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture, National Ag Law Center, Risk Mitigators and Advisors, Tyler Associates, as well as the lead economist for dairy at CoBank, and myself, Chrissy Wozniak from North American Ag. The day and a half of presentations will be followed by ag tours on Tuesday afternoon at Echo Farms, one of my favorite places here in Fort Myers. Attendees will experience farming at its most creative, with unique demonstrations, plants, and techniques being used to help farmers and urban gardeners in developing countries. A second tour at Echo will showcase simple technologies that can improve food, water, and shelter for millions of people. A third tour of a hydroponic grower is also being planned. For more information and to register, visit www.agconsultants.org. That's www.agconsultants.org. See you there.
All right, thanks so much everyone for being here today. I'm Chrissy Wozniak, founder of North American Ag, which is daily news, weekly podcast covering ag issues, ag tech, ag policy, and faith and family. And I'm here to talk to these gentlemen today. I'll do some introductions first. Bart Walker. He's the president of Pacific Ag Rentals, and he's a prominent player in the ag industry with a rich family legacy dating back to the late 1960s. In 2001, he and his father founded Pacific Ag Rentals, which has since evolved into a thriving enterprise boasting a fleet of over 3,500 pieces of equipment, serving a vast ag landscapes spanning across California, Arizona, Nevada, Washington, Oregon, Georgia, Florida, and Mexico. And under his leadership, Pacific Ag Rentals has also ventured into the realm of ag technology, democratizing access to cutting-edge innovations and contributing to the industry's collective progress. I want to also introduce Josh Roberts. He's the president of Triangle Farms, and he's a second-generation farmer born and raised in the Salinas Valley. After school, he spent most of his career on the shipper processor role. He spent 5 years at Fresh Express in grower relations and contract management and raw sourcing. And then he moved on to Taylor Farms, where he led regional raw supply and sourcing before taking on the development of organic raw program for the retail side of the business. And then in 2018, he had the opportunity to partner with Vic Smith through acquisition of what is Triangle Farms today. They farm about 10,000 crop acres in the Salinas Valley, which is about 40% organic. And then I also want to introduce Josh Roos, Senior Director of Ag Technology and Innovation at Duda Farm Fresh Foods. And Josh is a leader in the emerging sector of ag tech and innovation with insight into what can be possible as well as practical for business, which is very important, key. With 20 plus years of experience in the fresh produce industry, both on the business side of things with hands-on experience at the farm level as well. And it gives him a unique perspective when evaluating and implementing new ag tech. He believes it's equally important to find solutions that are practical in the fields as well as on the financials. Very important. So we're going to begin. I'm going to pose this question to all three of you, one at a time. What factors are driving growers to considering adopting automated solutions? So, Bart.
I say scarce resource labor. I always ask farmers, what are the big 3 things that you're concerned with? It's always been water, regulation, and labor. Although, interestingly, when I talked to a farmer in Yuma just a few weeks ago, he said it was water, regulation, and energy. And I thought that was the first time I've ever heard a farmer say energy was a concern. But I think a lot of them are looking to, improve profits or productivity, and that technology has to be able to do that. It has to lower your cost per unit. If it's not lowering your cost per unit, why do we need that? What is your next best alternative? If it's not this technology, then if I can still go to a hand labor crew and it's available and I can use it and it's saving me money, that's where the farmer should be at. So farmers have to really go through and Another question would be, how do we know if this is actually saving us money? So we have to go through and do a lot more analysis on that. But I say scarce labor and reducing our cost per unit.
Yeah, I think I would concur with that, Bart. I think for us, it's finding all the pinch points in the farm, and obviously the most common and the most opportune one is controlling cost, not necessarily reducing cost. That'd be great, but for us, it's fixing costs so that we can proceed in a farming environment like California, where labor and other critical direct costs are going to continue to go up. So for us, it's managing our budgets to the best possible way we can. And the only way to be profitable in the space that we're working in as we become more consolidated and so on is to know our costs, number one. So we'll leverage that technology to bring better data into our farms. And secondly, to mitigate the cost increases. So it may take a large capital investment, for example, to buy a platform, but the ROI, if accurate and long-term, will control that cost and then start to bring profit from what used to be just a straight cost component.
Yeah, and I agree with everything they just said. In addition to that, me personally and our company, when we're looking at new technologies, it has to solve a problem we actually have. There's a lot of things that come to us that don't solve problems that we don't have. So it needs to solve a problem we have. And you're going to hear me say this probably multiple times, and some of you have already heard it, but if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense to us. I think that's a big, big piece of this pie. I would love to have everything that's out there and have multiples of them. But if I can't financially justify it on paper, I can't do it. And the farming is a very razor-thin margin, as we all know. And so it's got to make sense in the financial aspect as well for us.
Great points. And we're going to talk about getting a little bit deeper into decision-making. So Josh Roberts, what is the decision-making process for growers? What do they have to go through to identify the right AgTech solution for their farm?
Yeah, so scale is important, I think, for a larger farm or a medium farm. I think it's a lot easier for us to decide. We farm 10,000 crop acres here in Salinas, but we're part of 35,000 acres across the western United States and northern Mexico. So it's very easy for us to probably roll out a capital investment and take some risk compared to a smaller farmer. So I think it's really important to understand what your true problems that you're trying to resolve are, and what value you're looking to bring back. So I think as a consumer and a user and having some experience in that is, I would suggest, that we need to leverage those technology firms as much as you possibly can before you pull the trigger. Make sure that you ask all the right questions. Most of the technology solutions that are out there are venture capital funded. And so generally that means there's a lot of money behind them, and they're looking for top line revenue benefit. So don't be afraid to push them to pay for everything. I would be careful. I would try it. I would go look at trials. Just because it's bright and shiny and looks cool, it has to really, really bring the return back to the ranch. And I think the most important is understanding the ROI from your own perspective. It's not what they tell you. You need to do the work yourself. You need to make sure that you actually have the problem that they tell you you do, right? Labor is a big one, right? Yeah, okay. Let's get worried about labor. There's lots of labor solutions. We use H2A labor. We have no labor issue. We have labor cost issues, right? So you have to be able to look forward far enough to understand that when you make the decision to leverage any technology, and specifically we're talking about cost offset technology, but there's lots of incremental benefit technology like water management and different things like that are technology. They're just not necessarily a robot, right? Or an AI-based technology. Right? And so we have to be careful to not get caught up in just what everybody else is doing, because it may work for me, but it might not work for you. You could spend hours, right, going over why.
Yeah, and for Josh Roos, what are the main objectives and goals when conducting field trials and for an AgTech solution? What are you looking at?
Yeah, so I would say, first and foremost, does it work? All of us up here get approached by a lot of different people with, we've got the solution to solve all the world's problems, and trust me, I'm in if that happens. But first and foremost, I want to know that it works, and I want to know that it works on my ranch, on my farm, the way I'm doing things, because the way Josh does things is different than the way I do things. So it's imperative that I see it on my ranch with my team, and again, the way we're doing things. So that's number one. Does it work the way everybody says? I'm going to come back to money again. Financially, how does it pencil out? If it does work, then we go on and start looking at the ROI. Is there an ROI, and is it reasonable? If you're talking about new technology and you want me to buy it based on a 10-year ROI and it's all computer driven, well, 10 years from now, that's probably not going to be the same computer driving that thing. So, you've got to put it in perspective. Yeah, there's an ROI, but is it realistic for what we're looking at? So, and then, do the trials and collect data and see what that data tells you, not only about what it did, how did it work, but how does it compare to what you're doing today? So we're doing everything on the farm today with labor and tractors and things that we all know about. So compare to what you're doing today. Did it really improve anything for you? Did it save you labor? Did it make you more efficient? Did it save you time? You got to capture all that data and take a peek at it. So those would be kind of the things I'd look at if I'm doing a trial with a startup company or a tech company, for that matter.
And how are you capturing that baseline data, I guess, to each of you? And then how are you comparing? And do you have some examples?
Yeah, I'll speak for me. It's a challenge to collect data right now. Not everybody has staff just laying around to sit out there and measure and count and monitor and do things like that. I try to rely on the company that's presenting the technology to me, but then that's a little bit of a delicate balance as well. So it's challenging to collect the data, but I think the data is critically important, and it takes time, and sometimes as farmers we want to go fast, but if you don't slow down and collect that data, you're going to make bad decisions, in my opinion. So I don't have a good answer for you, but I know it's really important, and a lot of times it's just me out there measuring, stopwatching, whatever it takes,
For us, I think the core of data collection and aggregation starts with a robust accounting, generally speaking, right? You need to know and organize your accounting team. And I've learned this the hard way over the last 7 years, coming into some we acquired some farms that were, an older style operation, more cash basis, and really organizing the way that your invoice flow is and allocating your cost to a lot specifically and sublot specifically, so that when you do run your ROIs, that you can truly know what you've spent. Because I think too often we think we spend something and we actually spend more or less. So that's one side of it, is organizing your controls and maintaining homeostasis with what you have. And then on the news side, when you bring the data inside, it's trust but verify. I think Josh is accurate. Let them do the work, but do your own checks. A lot of what we do is based on a pipe length that's 30 feet, but maybe that pipe's been rebuilt and chopped up and it's only 26 feet, right? It's a joke, but we have to use what's there. But ironically, there's technologies that can resolve that data for you. There's vision technologies that are isolated that can count plants and look at stress and follow up and look at remaining plants post, weeding. And you can compare that data to what your vendor or the application company that you're using or your own technology is providing. So I think it's the big thing is making sure that you can verify that what you're using is truly what it is, so that you can build a true ROI. Because Josh is right, the technologies will become obsolete, and you need to have a fast enough ROI that you can get, I would say, double the period of time back where it's true income or profit potential, because you're shelling out some serious cash.
And Bart, what are you seeing on farm? You're seeing a lot of different farmers. Are you seeing them doing these measurements when they're using AgTech, or are they just getting the job done?
I think a lot of farmers right now are drowning in data, and I believe what they need is information. They need actionable information, where I hope that all this is going to. And we've seen so much change from last year's FIRA to this year's FIRA, just talking with the people that are out there in the booths today. And having, the farmer's got, has an app. They've got 8 seconds to look at this app and do something with it. They want to look at that and understand that a pump is down, And they really don't want to have to go deal with that. They want to know that that app is calling up their irrigator foreman to go tell them the pump is down and to go fix that. Or if a tractor is out of fuel, call the fuel guy. Don't call me. Call the fuel guy. We need to simplify what the farmers are doing out there, because it's pure chaos out there of what they're dealing with. So I think that's where I'm hoping that it goes to. And to go to Josh's point, really looking at, is this technology saving us money? And I think a lot of the people forget about the cost of depreciation when they're looking at these machines. And really the biggest driver right now is the cost of capital. So that's really taking your price from, $1,000 a month to $3,000 a month on this. And did they calculate that? I hope UC Davis or Cal Poly or someone comes in and does a study like UC Davis did for 1,000 acres of head lettuce in the Central Valley. Boom, here's your costs. The farmers need a model that they can put this technology through to help them see if that's going to work, at least give them a baseline. So in case one of the companies out here, one of the vendors is saying, yes, you're going to get a 2-year ROI. Like, yeah, that's if I'm working 24 hours a day, which I'm not. That's if I have fields from here to Oklahoma and back, and I don't. So it's really understanding what we're trying to accomplish. And like what Josh said, Ruiz said, make sure that we've got the technology that is addressing one of our problems. Or was that you, Robert? So it's Josh and Josh. One of the Joshes said
I'll
that.
take credit for it.
Thank you.
All right. I agree.
But I think that I want to follow up just real quick, and I think that's critically important. Sometimes we're presented with ROIs that, to your point, it's got to run 24 hours a day, day and night, 361 days. And that's just not practical. It's just not logical. It's not the farming entity we're in. Maybe that works somewhere else. So I think those ROIs, just vet them. Make sure that you're in alignment with the company.
Yeah. Could you each share some AgTech solutions that have been successfully implemented, where there is that data at the end that says, yes, this was a good choice? Do you each have some examples?
I'd say first and foremost, we've been working with an automated weeder called Robovator and most recently Stout. And that really replaces, maybe 10 to 11 workers out in the field. It's not replacing that labor. It's just we have a hard time finding that labor. So much easier to bring that automation in if we can push that labor onto something that we don't have automation for. Those devices have been working well for us. If you looked 5 years ago, there were 3 weeders. Now there's 30. You can zap it, you can shoot it, you can pull it, pluck it, fire it. You can do anything to a weed right now. So it's really great to see that competition come in and really giving them the ability to go through and look at, hey, what's going to work out on our farm? We've been working with Burrow. We just started off with that collaboration, and that's working really well for us too. Taking off, if you think about the grape picker was moving a wheelbarrow with 150 pounds on it. Now they have a little machine that follows them around that really needs to have a Yeti on it going to the beach, but I digress. And just to see that helping the worker out, now we're making it easier for the worker to go home, and now he's saying, hey, I can actually go and play soccer on Saturday because my back's not hurting in the middle of June because I'm not having to shovel all these things around. Correct. So there's a lot of things that we've seen recently that are really starting to help the worker, with doing what they do.
And I'll say data has been a success story for me personally. Don't get me wrong, the robots, the weeders, all these kinds of things are great, working with them as well. But those are things that are more visible, I think, to the public, especially like here at a conference like this. Mm-hmm. But for me, data has been something that's been eye-opening. I've been in the business for about 20 years, and if you ask me what's the yield on lettuce in this area of the valley, or I know these things, right? I know that. I've been doing this long enough. I know what the yields are. I know what varieties we should be planting. But do I really? And what I found out, and I'm a big enough person to sit up here and admit it, I knew about 80%, but I didn't know that other 20%. And I challenged my team to go out and analyze that data we already had, or data we were collecting with some of the technologies we're talking about here today. But once I got that data and my team and I were able to sit down and analyze it together, I went from knowing 80% to knowing 95%. And it made a world of difference. And it blew my mind, to be quite frank. So success, innovation, technology, robots are great, but sometimes just the littlest thing, evolving your data and analyzing your data properly, can make a world of difference. And it did for me and my team, for sure.
Yeah, for us, the easiest technology to leverage is weeders. I think because there's it's pretty developed at this point. So we were the first ones, not to take any credit, I don't care, but we were the first ones to really bring the laser weeder with carbon offers here into Salinas, and that was a real eye opener for us, specifically with them, of how fast they were able to adopt and adapt to from an onion specific semi-autonomous rig to a fully developed 20-foot wide laser weeding solution for us, and let us, from the time we met out on the ranch till our first delivery was less than about a year. And so we bought 2 of those. We use them all over the place. We've sent one to Colorado this year, and it's been a success story for us. So I would say that's a really cool piece of equipment. The challenge for us is that when we bought them, I was growing about 3,000 acres of organic baby leaf. And fast forward to today, we're not growing any organic baby leaf. So things change that in your future where you have to adapt, right? So you've got $1.5 million hung out there from a couple pieces of equipment, and so the pressure for that is how do we adapt? And so we got them to start thinning and weeding at the same time, and so we're on our way. So I'd say that's really good. Verdant's got some really cool stuff coming. We have stouts. We work with FarmWise. We've worked with Bart with the RoboVator prior. Pretty much any weeding solution. We have a Garford. We have a lot of Agmatronics automated thinning machines. So that's on the weeding and thinning side. And then we've worked a lot with RDO Water and another company, Wild Eye Ag, to create some irrigation automation. Field N has been somebody we jumped in on early with. That they're more of a implement technology that models your productivity in the field through a Bluetooth and tractor interface. So it's pretty cool. So for our side, we use a lot of it, and I'd say we have a lot of failures. There's a lot of stuff that's mothballed. But when like Matt McGuire and I talk a lot, like I think that's cool. Vic Smith he likes to spend money and sometimes be the first loser with some of this stuff. But if you don't have technology platforms that are mothballed in your yard, you didn't do something. You didn't take the risk. And I would say that it's definitely proof that we've taken that risk and we will continue to. And there's more success stories than failures. And I don't know, that's what we're using now. There's probably more, but I can't remember them all.
Yeah, those are some great examples of success, and I have to second the Yeti on the beach.
Why didn't you bring that
idea?
I was going to. I didn't understand the crowd. I thought, margarita blender would be a little loud in here, but it does have battery power.
So how do you determine whether a direct sale or a leasing model or even a subscription model, how do you go through that process of deciding which way to purchase and which way to use this equipment?
I'll jump in. First and foremost, I don't care either way. I'm happy doing either one if whatever makes sense, again, for the financial and for the product itself. That being said, I'm a control freak. I like owning my own stuff. I like doing my own thing. There's no doubt about that. The struggle I have today, and I think we all have in a general sense, is I could go out and buy some of this equipment, some of these technologies, but I don't currently have a team that can manage them, maintain them, support them. Some of them are so specialized that you need somebody from Silicon Valley down here to run the thing. So with regard to that, the service plans are a lot easier. I don't like giving up the control necessarily, but we really struggle with having the right talent and team. And I'm saying this fully for me too. Some of this stuff I can't run. It's just too darn complicated. And that's a challenge in and of itself. So it really depends on the technology and my ability to maintain and run it.
Yeah, for us, obviously the less out of pocket, the better. Whether that's a lease through, an Ag Direct bank or renting the brands you trust here from Bart. For us, it's trying to make sure that we are creating the most value on how we acquire those tools. The service-based model conceptually is really, really good in theory, but I feel like it's probably best for the smaller farmers. I'd say the 0 to 500 acre farmers, that's a great solution because they probably don't have the means to go buy and or pay $25,000 a month to rent one, right? So I think there's a seat for every ass, they say. So I think that's the solution for us. Being larger scale, we probably eventually want to buy it. I think there's a component of negotiation that goes on when you make deals with startups and new technology. You want to try to leverage as much as you can to get them to maybe in your contract you create a buyback plan, so that you can stay in front of the obsolete nature of the product. But even if it's obsolete, it's not really, right? Like we've been hoeing and thinning lettuce with a hoe forever. The hoes just got longer, right? Like so if it can make it 30 years, like just because there's a newer, better tool doesn't mean that the old Cessna 182 won't fly, right? And so that's the other thing we look at is it'll provide value forever. And the service plan is really important, I would say, because of the unknowns. But the other side of it is we've had to adjust the way we recruit, right? So Josh has got a good point. But so you have to find talent that's willing to come to work in our hours, in our conditions, but also be able and competent enough to learn and or have the experience to work on these things from a farm perspective. The service plans are great, but some of the folks that are working for those are coming from the Silicon Valley, and they start work at 11 a.m. and maybe they go to sleep when they get tired, right, at like 3. And so, and man, Saturdays, right? Like we don't. I'm golfing, right? Like, so we need to have some inherent talent on the ranch at least to get us through. And but it becomes a partnership, a very strategic partnership, and you have to be, in my opinion, we all need to be intimately connected to what it is that we do. And it's the same with tractors, though. All it is something new. Like we iPhone, right? Oh, I want my flip phone. Well, we all have them in our pockets now, and we figured it out. So it's a joint, I would say, connection between the service support, which is required. It's just paramount to the success. But us, we also have to adopt how we work with those folks.
Right. And Bart, from your point of view, what are you seeing with your customers, and how does your business model work?
Yeah, I think at first, obviously we listen to whatever the customer says, and we go figure out how to make that work. I don't know if you've ever tried to tell a farmer what to do, but it's a little challenging at times. So we just listen a lot. And at first, I think the service model really worked out best because it was an org chart issue. You had the irrigator, and then you had Josh, right? You didn't have anybody in the middle here. And as this has matured, as the technology has matured, we started bringing in those pimple-headed kids that are playing Xbox and, good at playing video games, and bring those people in so the farmers can have a trusted advisor on their side going through and vetting this technology. There's a lot of stuff happening out there. I had some guy tell me we had to put speakers in the field to play music in order to get the lettuce to grow better. And I thought, wow, here we go. And he said, but don't worry, I've talked to the bees and they're okay with that. And I'm like, all right, next. There's a lot of stuff that's out there, and we're trying to do our best. And other vendors are here too. I know Coastal Tractor has some stuff. RDO has some stuff. We're trying to go through and vet this as best we can to bring the best stuff that we can to the Joshes and to the farmers that are out there. So we've seen the service model, then we went to the buy model, then we went to the lease model, then back to the service model again. And I don't think any of the vendors are making any money on the service model. It's really, really tough to, because they're just not set up for that, because it's 20 acres here, then 5 acres there, then 2 acres there, and paying somebody to be there waiting for one of the Joshes to call is really expensive. So the farmers have found out it's better to go to the service model. It's cheaper for them than I think owning it in some instances. So we have to be fluid with that and with technology that comes up. But as Josh was saying with the iPhone, I have a nice Samsung phone. I paid $1,000 for it, and this year they're giving it away with a free cup of soup. So technology changes fast. So our tagline is kind of ownership is overrated, right? It's rent that stuff. We can't rent it all, right? We go out and buy that and rent that. It allows them to go through and try that and get it for the needs that they need it. And if they do need to go buy some, great. Buy 4, rent 2, and it kind of helps them out with that. So renting, I believe, allows them to have access to that without having to purchase it. And if they want to at some point later on, we can apply the rent to purchase, and then they can go through and buy it. So we make it kind of easy, and we support it. Yeah. A lot of these technologies come from Denmark, come from Germany, and if they have a problem, it's going to be on Friday at 4:30 because everything breaks down on Friday at 4:30 of a 3-day weekend. And if they're calling somebody about the technology and the phone goes boop, 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 you're calling overseas, and you're probably not going to get an answer. So having local support, local representation is really key, because they just want to know that somebody's on it. Somebody's got a part, they're stocking a part, they're bringing it out. Somebody's moving towards that direction. And that's, we can't partner with everybody, but we're trying to partner with the best that we see out there, being led by the farmers on what to get, and then we go through and support that.
Are you all keeping up with which Josh is being referred to at what time? I'm starting to lose track at this point.
I just throw it out there. I can't get it wrong if I say Josh.
Yeah. I just wanted to echo what he said real quick on that. The service, this is where Bart and his team come in great. Having somebody local is key to this deal. Many times I've had people with technology in my field, and a belt breaks. Well, it's in Germany, we got to ship it. And so park the thing and let it sit. That's not okay. We need somebody like Bart and his team who are local, who are going to take care of this stuff. So for those of you with tech companies out there listening, that's critically important, I think, to adoption anywhere you're at.
That makes sense.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
There are many levels and layers between manufacturer and farm. So who should provide ongoing support? Who does? And what do you expect? 3 completely different things.
You got to have somebody that's front line of defense. We believe we have the bayonets on. The manufacturer's always there. But when we make that handshake, like Josh was saying, when we make that handshake with that farmer, we need to be there. We've made that commitment. And it's kind of up to us to go have those conversations with the vendor and have it really spelled out on who's covering what the warranty covers, what it doesn't cover. So hopefully we can absorb some of that. But if we're not representing that product and Josh is having to deal with it, he has to go through and make those discussions and have it clear, have our expectations outright. Okay, when is this, as I need uptime. When this thing breaks down, how long is it going to take before you get a rep here? How long is it going to take before we get a part here? Who's servicing this? And understand those components. And that has to be done before you even bring those are the hard questions you need to ask the vendor. Yeah. When they're just trying to sell that stuff, you need to say, stop, time out. Let's just have a quick something's going to break. All brands break. John, they all break down. There's no secret to that. So when that does break down, who's going to take care of that? And that's, I think, is the big challenge.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll expand a little bit on that. I'll take it a little step further, and who does what and who's responsible for what. A lot of times companies are presenting technologies to us and saying, hey, it can solve this problem, and if you put it in the field and it'll run like this or whatever. It's not my job to do the R&D for that company, but a lot of times they expect me to. And so when it comes to servicing that machine, if we're in trial mode and we're trialing your product on our ranch, I need you to have a team there to make sure that it's running and it doesn't go down. You have all the parts you need. You can't put it on my ranch and say, okay, by the way, go do your trial. Anything that happens to it, it's on you. And we're really just developing this stuff. So we're going to ask you to pay for all the R&D while we're here. That's not a good model. It's not practical. Yes, there's case scenarios where that works. And every once in a while, I guess you can make an argument for something. But when you're trying to sell a product, you got to have all your ducks in a row, and you got to have all your stuff lined up, and it can't be any resistance or pressure points on us, because otherwise the natural reaction is to walk away and say, see, I told you it wasn't going to work and we're going to leave. Growers in this area especially are kind of stuck in their ways a little bit, and it's hard to get them to change sometimes. And if you have a technology out there and the ownership, due to ownership, comes out and they're only there for 5 minutes and something's going wrong, they take it as okay, well, and we knew it wasn't going to work. So again, be prepared, have all your stuff lined up, make sure there's a team, make sure you got all the stuff, and don't put the burden on us. It's not fair for us to supply your R&D dollars, basically.
Yeah. So not to be controversial or argumentative, but I kind of disagree with that. I mean, you're not wrong, but like from my perspective, I feel like it's counterproductive slightly to continue that attitude, because we need the help, right? So my philosophy and our philosophy, but my own in particular, is get as involved as you possibly can, right? Like invite yourself into these meetings, go to their headquarters, Get on a board if you can. Do the extra work, and it'll pay off. And altruistically, it's going to pay off for all of us in our industry. We hope that our vendors do that. We had an issue a couple weeks ago where we lost a part on a tractor, and we trusted that our vendor would get us that part, and they didn't. And uptime is critical, right? Like that's what it's all about, right? Well, we run some of this stuff 22 hours a day. But we have an inherent understanding and a relationship, even if we're relying on our vendor, that we know where to go, and we know that through those relationships and the core competency of those technologies that we can get as much out of it as they can, because it's a true plight. Like we absolutely need that. Like it's costing us, $1,000 an hour in some cases to run it, right? So I would say that if we leave on our old hat, and Josh isn't wrong, like, tradition. I'm not a farmer, right, at the end of the day, right? I've built most of my life has been spent working with other farmers. And by doing that, I've had the luxury of learning all the good things they do and trying to model it after the best that I've seen. And I'm learning every day. So I have probably a different mindset than most. But what I've seen is the more you interact and the more you know, the better we all will be. The old rising tide raises all the ships theory. And yeah, it takes more work, right? And we'll probably spend more money internally to do that. And the next guy that buys the cool toy that I had first that has no idea the thousands of hours that we put into it. And that's fine. The hope is that if we're the leaders in that and we continue to lead the charge, someday it'll pay a dividend, whether it's through success and profitability or votes, meaning more acres, a better crop, so on and so forth, right? Like that's what we're doing this for. We're constantly auditioning to our respective customers.
The tractor that went down, that wasn't a par tractor, was it?
Let's not dig into who and why. I'm not going to do that. I'm sure. But things happen. And
they all break down.
Yeah,
and it's just there's supply chain issues with everything.
Yeah.
So.
The difference is some things are faster, easier, replacement, or there's tractors in a yard, right?
Mm-hmm. So let's switch gears to ROI now. How are you calculating ROI, and what are you thinking in terms of payback period?
Yeah, ROI is pretty simple. It's everybody can do math. Josh was alluding to it earlier. Your accountants know all your numbers, or should. Hopefully they do, and they'll tell you right away whether or not it's making money. ROI sometimes becomes this thing. It doesn't need to be. It's real simple. And what's a timeline? Everybody's got their own timeline. Each technology's got its own timeline, so it's hard to say, I'm only going to put it in for 5 years and then go from there. Everything's different. So you have to evaluate things differently, in my opinion, whether you're talking weeders or irrigation or biologicals or data. I mean, it's all got different ROIs. But at the end of the day, if I have to do funny math to make it work, I think that's the key for me. If I gotta kind of, if I do this and if I move this here and if I allocate a little depreciation or this or that just to make it work, that's not the kind of stuff I'm interested in. It should be very cut, clear, and dry. It's not complicated, or we shouldn't make it complicated. And I think too often we do, unfortunately.
Yeah, for our business, we just go slow into it and really look at the model of what we're trying to look at, bring in the cost of capital like we talked about, bring in the depreciation, bring in the expenses, and just trying to look at real world scenarios, not hyped up scenarios on getting this much utilization, just like the Joshes have talked about. So,
right. And how is it differing, the ROI, between large scale farmers and small scale growers?
I think it's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same for large or small. It doesn't make a difference. You still have to get it. The smaller guys can't afford the bigger carbon robotics. I'd say rent them. I think rental is a big key for the smaller. Obviously, I'm biased, but for the smaller growers. But I think ROI is ROI. Margins are thin, whether you're large or small. And you're trying to do everything you can't really control the cost of the product that you're selling for. That's determined by the market, but you can control your costs, and that's what these guys do best, is control their costs. So,
and I want to make it clear. I might sound a little more negative than I intend to, so I apologize. I don't want to be that way. I want all the technology. I like it all. I wish I could have all robots out there and I could do all the data analysis and drones, and I do. I really do want it all, but it's simple math. It's not, that's all it can be. It can't be anything more complicated than simple math.
Right. So what advice do you have for growers who have sticker shock?
Rent.
What's that?
You see the theme? You see the theme coming here? Or talk, I would say talk with the vendor too that you're talking with and just say, hey, here's my anxiety. The answer is no. What does yes look like? That's what I'd ask him and just say, hey, take some of the pain off on me. I don't want to have all this risk. I don't want to buy the $1,000 phone and find out you're giving it away for free tomorrow. Right? Let's talk and have a conversation with them. And I think you're going to be surprised that a lot of these technology companies, especially the new guys that are starting off, will be flexible because they want to find out too. They want to make their machine better as well.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd say, it's not as simple as an answer, right? Like I would say that the technology firms or the solutions that are coming to market or on market, they probably want to. It's a challenge inherently because they're venture capital funded for the most part, and there's a certain amount of time where their money needs to float out, and they're building top line, but eventually the bottom line now needs to be sufficed for their respective investors, and so take advantage of the early part of that and get as much out of that as you possibly can. But if they want to be here for a long period of time and it's not transactional, and they're not trying to build up to go public or something like that, then my guess is that they're gonna listen to you. They're gonna try to figure out how to get more out there. As you guys all know, what we do, especially here in Salinas, Yuma, and kind of the core specialty vegetable world, is it's very, very heavy word of mouth, right? So it's incumbent upon them to work with us and to create solutions. And when you get to the point, right, they're borrowing the money too. So you've got to pay for it, but when it gets to the point where those decisions are made, there's alternate solutions. I would say be creative. Maybe you find a partner that if you're only a 32-week farmer, maybe you find somebody for those other 20 weeks in the desert, so on and so forth. And there's lots of guys that are already doing that. Bart's doing it with his equipment by renting it, right? That's one way to do it. There's lots of ways to skin the cat, they say, right?
Do you have anything to add?
No, I agree with Josh's last point. There's a lot of creative ways to make it work for multiple people if people are willing to collaborate. Yeah. One of the earlier panels, they were talking about collaboration, and I think that's key to all of this stuff working, whether it's Western growers in the tech center, FIRA, or growers side by side. If Josh only needs it for half the time and I need it for half the time, and we can come to that sort of agreement, win-win for all of us. Yep. Tech companies winning, we're both winning. Easier said than done, don't get me wrong. He and I haven't agreed yet, but we're working on it. We're talking, we're going to lunch. But if we can do it, there's creative ways to get it done if we really all want to be doing this stuff together.
Right, yeah. So we'll start to close up now. I'll ask a question on behalf of manufacturers. I think gone are the days where you have sales reps coming up the driveway to visit growers. How do you think we should be learning about the new technology? It's a lot of overload, right? So how do growers want to learn about this if they don't want to be sold to at the same time?
YouTube, LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm dead serious. I mean, that's how I saw carbon.
Yeah.
You'd be shocked how. I mean, everybody knows this already, but like it's sitting there in your hand. Downtime. Some of us geek out on that stuff, and others do. But word of mouth, and that's the best way. These social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, right? Like ideas come in the forms of many fashions, and if you could create direct your brain to create a solution, that's one way to do it. And some of us work with our hands, some of us work with our minds, some of us work with both. But you know your problems, and all you got to do is type it into a search engine. I mean, it's dumb, but it's actually true.
And I would say FIRA, obviously, conventions, things like this are great. The Western Growers Tech Center, we're very fortunate here in Salinas to have them, Dennis and Walt and that whole group down there, downtown. There's a bunch of information and companies there that are not necessarily hard selling you, but as a grower, you just have to walk in the door and say, what's going on? And I'm in there all the time because I find out a lot of stuff there. And it's amazing to me how few growers are actually walking through those doors And that's a resource that exists right here locally that isn't even being utilized. And I'm trying to plug them because I really appreciate the work they do, but I'm also trying to say, hey, this is how we're all going to get better too, is if we walk through that door and say, hey, tell me what you're doing. Then it's not the hard sale at your door.
Right.
Good point.
Great points. So do you each want to close with a thought?
Other than I just want to say thank you to FIRA for having me up here, and I think this was a great discussion. All the discussions so far have been great, and the show's great, so appreciate being invited.
Yeah, same here. Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
If it floats, flies, or farms, rent it.
I've heard that said a different way.
I made the T-shirt up. You guys want that?
Hey, Bart, do you rent tractors?
Yeah, just a couple.
I just want to double check.
I'll let you borrow them too, just in case they don't.
Thanks.
And we made it on time. So thank you all for joining us. And
thanks, guys. Good job.
Congratulations.
Josh, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Did you know that at NorthAmericanAg.com, we are committed to providing valuable resources for farms and agribusiness? Find your next podcast in the Best of Ag podcast library, delve into our on-demand webinar series, check out the latest in ag news, or treat yourself to a new hoodie or tee from our swag shop. Head over to our subscribe page to join our community and be the first to know about what's happening in the industry. North American Ag provides daily ag news and weekly podcasts covering ag tech, ag policy, new products, family, and faith. North American Ag gives farm families and ag professionals insight into what's happening in agriculture throughout North America. Ditch the mainstream media. Join North American Ag.